Welcome to the Performance SmArts podcast. I'm your host, Rob Lawson. On this podcast, I'll speak with people who use their art to make a living and have for a long time. I'll speak to guests and ask them questions like, at what point did they know that their hobbies were more than hobbies, that they were something that they could actually sustain? We'll get into the philosophical questions about the performing arts and the arts in general. The most important thing that I aim to do with this podcast is to spark curiosity and let others know that if you do want to pursue a career with your art, it is possible. Our first guest is percussionist Brian Radock. I first met Brian Radock about 24 years ago as his cabin counselor at Interlochen Arts Summer Camp, and he and I clicked right away. He was 12, I was 19. The next year, I requested him to be in my cabin along with any other trouble campers, or whatever negative term was used for our tribe of humanity at that time. Fast forward all of these years, and Brian has done everything from playing with Jennifer Hudson and Lauren Daigle at Carnegie Hall to even earning his Broadway seat for the production The Illusionist. His story is not relatable to anyone, and it is also completely relatable to everyone who has a love of the arts, specifically in collaborative performing arts. I hope that you enjoy our conversation.
Hey, can you
Hey!
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Who is this man in front of me? Because last time I saw you, there was a boy with the same name.
Look more like him.
Yeah, you want to say hi to Truman? Truman, this is my buddy Brian. Here,
Hey, Truman.
say hi?
Hello.
Hey, good to finally get to meet you. I've heard some great
Truman
things.
he's my little drummer, man. You would love hanging out with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would love hanging out with him. Well, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great. Can you
That's
hear me well?
I can actually. I just realized that I did not have my volume turned up very much at all.
There
Oh.
it is.
Yeah, I am not gonna lie. It is so nice to see your face, friend.
Yeah, you too, man. It's been way too long.
I think it was the summer of 2001, right before 9/11 was the last time. Well, no, maybe
Wow.
when I came to Disney World, maybe. No, that was. I think that I came to Disney World and saw you briefly. Maybe the summer or the spring after that, but
Yeah, it was somewhere around that time. That was 20 years ago, dude.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, you were a teenager and an awkward, scrawny one at that.
Oh, very much so.
Oh my gosh. So this is great. I am so thankful. And I have a lot of questions for you because I've been able to watch you vicariously through social media and see all of these amazing adventures that you go on, these wonderful gigs that you are a part of. And I'm genuinely honored that we're having this conversation right now, man.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I'm just happy to see your face. You were always just like someone that was such a influence on me in the best of ways. It was so great. And man, yeah, it has definitely been a journey for to say the least.
Right. Oh my goodness. So first thing, and I can edit most of this. Okay.
Yeah.
So is there anything that is off limits as far as topics go? I love getting into the nitty gritty with emotions and mental health. And I know that you've been kind of open about that stuff because I think
please do.
Like, we really both, I think, understand how important it is to normalize. I mean, I won't even say men's mental health. I'll say like all mental health.
But especially in men's mental health. I by all means, please do. I'm very much a strong advocate for that, and it is not something that I have any caution for myself about, because I feel like it's a subject that needs to be talked about.
Yeah, dude. I completely agree. Okay, so are there any topics that are off limits though you don't want me to go into? I'd love to ask like questions about your father.
No, go for it. Yeah, go
Great,
for
great.
it.
So
You're
then
totally good.
let's. I've got my hit list. I have no clue what I'm doing. Actually, that's one thing that has not changed one bit about me over the last 20 plus years. I'm just out here doing it and having a good time. And I don't know, people keep giving me money to do what I do. So I'm going to continue doing what I do. Do you feel that way?
Oh, I get that all the time. Like just the whole idea of like anyone that I feel like is working in some sense of entertainment or something like that is just, you have to have a sense of imposter syndrome to be as good at what you do, to like, have people give you money for it. And that like that's something that kind of sticks with you like
Right.
constantly, no matter what mountain you climb.
Oh, completely. It is an audacious thing that we do. Sorry, my internet is unstable, so I'm going to give it just a second. Okay. Me too,
All right,
internet.
now, yeah, it's
Me too.
that's good, man. You still got
I
the
feel you,
comedic
internet.
timing you've always had.
Oh, I in fact, I'd say that I've sharpened it over the years. All right. So, okay, let's talk about this. We met at Interlochen, and I was your counselor, I believe, 2 years in a row. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, back at Interlochen Intermediate Boys Camp, and like I I can still smell how bad those cabins smelled with 10 like teenage boys just like, oh, like I remember you being like, for the love of God, some of you take a shower.
That sounds like me. I'm a hygienic person. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like
you
I
were telling
enjoy
us back
smelling
then.
nice.
You were like, if any of you want to be able to like talk to any sort of love interests in any shape or way, you have to shower and you have to go watch 10 Things I Hate About You and take notes. Brilliant.
Oh, 21-year-old me was freaking on it, man. He had his finger on the pulse of what the F was going on. While also knowing absolutely nothing about anything. So, okay, then you were, I would assume, what, 12, 13, maybe?
It was like, 13, 14-ish, around that age, give or take.
Okay. And how many years did you attend Interlochen in total?
I was there 11 years. 11 different years, and like some of them like I was there as like a day camper with like with my folks for a lot of those earlier years and everything, and then I was a night camper for several years, and that's how we got to meet.
Okay, got it. So I know that your dad was on the board of directors, was it, for Interlochen? At the time. So what's his story with Interlochen in general?
So he's got a great story. Had a great story about all of that because he grew up in Ann Arbor, Detroit, and around those areas, and ended up like going to University of Michigan to do music education, and got his bachelor's and his master's at University of Michigan. And he's like a trombone player, but his whole goal was he wanted to be a band director. And then he was a band director at Troy High School just outside of Ann Arbor. I can't remember if it was Ann Arbor or Detroit, for about 2 or 3 years. And then Ed Downing, who previously one of the guys that ran Interlochen, this was before he was running Interlochen. He found my dad at as a band director and said, "Hey, I want you to come up and like run this all-state program." Oh wait, I need to go back further actually. My dad went to the Interlochen Academy in 1969 as a high school senior. So this was before he went and got his degrees. He went and did the academy for only 1 year. And
it was a boarding school, right?
Correct. Yeah. It was like not the summer sessions, but like the full year session as like a senior in high school. And so then he did his degrees, and he was a band director, and Ed Downing saw him and said, "Hey, you should come help run our All-State program." So my dad went up and helped like coordinate a lot of the All-State program and left his job as a band director. And then Disney actually found him at Interlochen and said, "Hey, we want to hire you to like help work on the college band program out in LA." So he moved out to LA and lived in LA, worked at Disneyland for about 2 or 3 years. And then they said, "We're going to transfer you to Orlando to help open this new park called Epcot." So I ended
Wow.
up, yeah, he moved to Orlando, and several years later, I ended up coming into the fray, and that's why like you don't meet many like born and raised Orlando kids. It's just a lot of transplants. But
Right.
around that time, there were so many like Disney people that kind of came in, and Orlando before '71 when Disney World opened up was really more of a
Tiny.
small town. Yeah,
Yeah.
like so suddenly there was this like boom of population. That's why I was born and like raised in Orlando,
Wow.
and he stayed in touch with Interlochen all those years because of how much it was an influence on him, and really like as a student and as someone that worked the All-State program. And he served on their board of trustees for, I don't even know, like um, might have been 20 years. It was a
Wow.
long time. So, and it
Wow.
was something that it was a passion project of his that he just loved Interlochen so much. And that was like, you know, he wanted to be able to share that with his sons and everything. And that's how
Yeah.
we ended up getting there.
Oh my gosh. So wonderful. Now, I learned something after his passing when you eulogized your father in ways that were genuinely inspiring and really 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 showed your love and admiration for him, and in ways that made me so proud of you, and in ways that made me really really understand, not just from the few interactions that I had with him, but understand holistically what a really neat man he was. But
Mm-hmm.
I learned that he impacted my life long before we met, because I found out that he was the one who started up the Magic Music Days. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. That was definitely like his program and one of his babies and everything.
I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of kids from all over the country that could relate to having this experience because of your father. That's a big deal. Okay, you grew up where things are happening, right? I am broadcasting from this lovely section of the middle of a cornfield in Northwest Ohio. Which, you've been in Michigan long enough. You understand there's coastal Michigan and then there's Midwest Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
This is like Midwest Michigan, only just south of the border by about 20 miles. So like we're halfway between Toledo and Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I am. For kids here to get to go do that, I know that he knew how much that meant. But for a lot of them, that was where they peaked musically. They will never have an artistic experience in their life that was more memorable than the experience that came from your dad's idea. And I know that you're proud. I know that you're, and I know that that's, yeah.
It's something that I am just so constantly in awe of the older I get. Is just how much of a vision he had for like furthering the things that Interlochen implemented in him, and
Yes.
what that meant to like bring so much like joy to other people. And it's something that like the humility that he always kept about it was always astounding. And like you were saying about how yeah, I grew up in a place where things are happening. And what's so funny is when you grow up in a place like Orlando, I remember we would go out of town, and we would, as kids, be like, "Where's the theme park here?" And they're like, "There's not a
Right.
theme park everywhere." It was like, what do you mean there's not a theme park everywhere? And like
Right.
the first time going to Six Flags was just like, what? This is the other options? And
Right.
you know, I grew up in Orlando thinking that everybody at Disney was from Florida. I thought this was our thing. Like, and
So funny.
then it's like, wait, you know when you like a band that's like hasn't gotten big yet, and you're just like, oh well, and then they get big, and you kind of have this feeling of like, well, I liked them first, and I got to see them first. Like that was when you're a kid growing up in Orlando, and you're like, wait, you mean everybody in the world knows about this Disney thing? What do you talk? What do you? Everybody? Middle of China, you could. Oh, they know exactly about Disney and Orlando. That was just one of those like, hang on a second, this is
so normal.
Crazy. So like to realize as I've gotten older how much of an impact that is for people to have been able to come down here and perform is just something that's so special. And you know, it's funny, I just got back from I've been playing over at Universal Studios for their Mardi Gras band. We do it during the spring, and we've done it these last 4 years here. And there are 3 people in the band that are a good bit older than me that said that your dad was the one that hired me for the All-American College Band and brought me down to Orlando, and it changed my life, and it's why I'm a professional musician and why I'm doing this. And the fact that I'm getting to play with his son, who's just like so, it reminds me so much of him, with that same kind of like just love of like spreading this joy of music and entertainment and what we do. There's like, man, that is something that just brings tears to my eyes to even think about that. It's just so special to hear that stuff.
I bet, and I'm sure that you hear it. Like, I'm sure that if you wore a T-shirt around that said "My dad created Disney's Magic Music Days," you'd have a lot of people randomly walking up to you. It impacted more people than you could imagine, because it wasn't just the kids in the band; it was their families who chose to come along on the trips too. And for a manufacturing town in a cornfield, that is sometimes the only vacation that those families ever take in their life.
What's amazing about all of that is that like he would like so he wore many hats at Disney, and many hats, and like you know how they have like the Chinese theater there with all the handprints and everything. One of his jobs was talking to the managers of these celebrities and bringing them down to Orlando to do the handprint ceremonies. And like, you know, everybody like Tom Hanks and, you know, Robert Downey Jr. like, and, you know, as a kid, when I met Sinbad, it was just like, this is the best day of my life.
Right. Oh, I bet.
I even got to meet the dog from White Fang, and it was just like, oh my God, this is, it was everything to me. I got a great picture, and the dog is taller than me. But like, so like, he did all of that with all these celebrities, but that was not the thing that he talked about. It was like doing these All-American College Band programs, or doing the Magic Music Days programs, doing like the Disney Honors that he eventually founded as well, and doing like bringing down college bands to be able to be at Disney, and would insist that they did not have to pay to perform there, because he wanted it to not be about that. And that, it's like, you know, anybody who's anybody can have these moments of just like, oh, I met so-and-so, I did so-and-so, you know, when one of the most fun conversations you can have with our friends is like, who are the famous people you meet? Because everybody is just like, I got my story. That never meant anything to him. It was always just like getting these kids to be able to play music at this special place. And it was just like, how beautiful is that? He always kept that spirit and was so genuine.
Man, it's so wonderful. And I do want to get into your career, but it suffice to say, between your father's career and influence and Interlochen, wait, actually, isn't your mother a percussionist, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, she's a percussionist as well. And
so like you just grew up surrounded by it, would you say?
Oh yeah. It was always around me. It was like, you know, 24/7. That was just, you know, the way of life, basically.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. So tell me about education. What'd you do for education before doing what you do now?
So, like when I was, oh yeah, one more quick fun story about my dad. When I was
Mm,
in fifth grade, I did a paper about Dave Brubeck because I
yes.
really liked Dave Brubeck, and my dad called up he called up Dave Brubeck and put him on the phone with me to have an
Shut up.
interview. And he was just like, "Hey, I got this guy on the phone for you." And it was Dave Brubeck. I was just like,
Oh my gosh.
so when you wrote Rondo a la Turk, that was pretty cool. Like, you know, those Chris Farley,
Like Chris Farley,
SNL
yes.
things.
Right.
When you were reading that was awesome.
Oh my gosh.
So
That's so cool.
so me kind of growing up in all this, it was I was always just kind of doing a lot of the different like competition stuffs and things when I was younger. And you know, when you're a percussionist, there's such a large gamut of instruments and things to approach. And the way that I ended up really learning on things was not getting to a point where, like, you know, if I got to be really good at one thing, it would like the focus would shift to like, okay, what are the things you're bad at? And
Right.
we're gonna keep like building that up. And like, you know, I used to sight read, 10 charts a day and I would hate it. And it was
Yeah.
just like, okay, you get one shot at this. And I would be like, come on, give me another shot, please give me. And it was like, no,
Right.
that's not the point. So, I worked a lot on my sight reading, and I would spend those like 6 to 8 hours a day in a practice room, especially during college, because I ended up going to Rollins College, a little small school here in Orlando. And then I was auditioning for a bunch of different like conservatories and places like that. And I was really trying to like, at that time, I was wanting to be a timpanist in an orchestra. That was just like,
Yeah.
okay, because I started gigging around Orlando when I was like 14 and everything, and I always
Right.
loved playing gigs. But I also like I did drum corps with the Boston Crusaders, and I won their timpani competition for DCI. Actually, you'd love this because I wrote a solo based on Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd songs. And
I think I've actually heard it. Is it the timpani solo?
yeah,
I
that's the one.
Brian, when I said that I'm a fan of yours, I mean it. Okay. I've heard it. I've played it for my students.
Oh, awesome.
You inspire them and they don't know you. But that's why I'm doing this podcast, because
I
there have
love
been
that.
all of these wonderful people that I've stayed in connection with, that I show my students like, no, this is something you could do. Here's somebody out there doing it. Check out what they're doing. And so to actually get to have them be able to hear a conversation with you. And okay, so tell me this: when you were a kid and you were doing all that practicing and all of that perfection finding, grade yourself. Okay, your internal monologue, was it more of a bully or more of a cheerleader?
It was definitely more of a bully. It was
Yeah.
definitely more of a bully, and it came with the like the stakes that were put in front of me. Having a mother that was a really accomplished percussionist at a high level, and like my stepdad being Danny Gottlieb and playing with Pat Metheny like for his first like 6 albums, and playing with Mahavishnu. And my
Oh,
stepdad, my dad, and everybody, they all actually were really great friends all the way through and everything. And
yeah.
that was always a really pleasant thing on a side note. But the standard is really hard to live up to. And I over the years figured talked with my therapist about the idea of like, I'm not a perfectionist at heart. I'm
Mm,
not the type of person that will bully myself at heart, but
right.
I kind of became a learned perfectionist to try to live up to these standards that were like, you know, whether present or not present, were always like looming, and that's one of those things where you just kind of like a lot of people, especially when you're younger and everything, a lot of people will say, "Man, I really wish that I had some more of that like constant music presence in my life." And it's like I totally get that. I understand where having that like that essence around you and that expertise around you is very helpful in so many ways. But
Yeah.
there's also an incredible amount of like, man, when my mom, she could be definitely very very hard on how like
Uh,
how the practicing would go, because
An
it
old
was just
school
like,
musician. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's just like, oh, you missed the B flat twice if I did a run in the other room, and it was
Right.
just like, I just like, and when I hear all these my other friends and their parents, like they can just come out and go, they're like, man, that was amazing, that was
Right.
incredible. Like it was just like there was something that I was like, oh, that seems really appealing to me. And
Right.
my dad was much more of the kind of cheerleader person, like and then my mom was like the tough love, like, if I tell you you're doing a good job, then you're going to get complacent in this sense
Right.
right here, which can be a very dichotomy thing, especially when you're in a developmental stage of
Right.
figuring out who you are and what you want to be. And, I also, like, when it came down to is that pushing myself in a practice room and finding good practice routines that weren't like toxic of just like beating myself
Yes.
up was something that got me to the goal of what I truly love, that was just being on a stage and being present in that moment.
Yes.
It was just like, okay, it's worth it to be able to keep doing these things, and yeah, like it's holding that standard so that I can be on a stage and I can feel like I can perform and take in the moment. And
Right.
that's kind of where like I try to be less of a bully to myself, and it's hard to ground yourself when you're
It is.
like learning something that you're not good at for a while.
This episode of Performance Smarts Podcast is brought to you by your mom. Nothing would be here without your mom.
Are you tired of regular old socks that just, well, sock? Then you need Dingle Hopper Feet. Dingle Hopper Feet. Breathable, comfortable, and guaranteed to make your tootsies the envy of the podiatrist world.
Dingle Hopper Feet? Really?
Hey, Rob, we've been with you since your sock puppet days. We support all your artistic endeavors, no matter how unusual.
All right. You got me there, Dingle Hopper Feet. They're dingle darn delightful.
Dingle Hopper Feet. We put the fun in fungus. Visit us online at DingleHopperFeet.com.
It took a lot of therapy as well, and a lot of really finding my own personal Tao of musical philosophy. But I am very much in the camp of there being no such thing musically as a wrong note, only missing context. And if you thought it was a wrong note, then you just couldn't imagine the context. So that's on you, not me. Now, that's an evolved sense of thinking that you can only get to once you know what you're doing. And I understand that. But for my students, I have never been even remotely hard on any of them, and I just watch them keep getting better and better and better. So it turns out that at least what I am trying to find are those non-toxic ways to drive motivation. And tell me if you think I'm right here, is that it's all about curiosity. Because like
Yeah.
once that curiosity is sparked, like watch out, especially if you're those of us who have ADHD or some other neurodivergence, right? It's right. We love it. It's our superpowers, though. It takes a lot of learning and a lot of living to understand that these are our superpowers. But that's I mean, talk a little bit about that, about just how you approach your music now versus how you did then what are some of the healthy tips that you use that work that maybe you could give this to the listeners?
One thing that is easy for anyone to fall into the trap of is trying to achieve your way to love and feeling like, I have to achieve this for someone to care about me and for someone to like actually, like give me that sense of like love and acceptance that we crave and that
Right.
everybody
Yes.
craves.
Right.
And that like it's like I've seen it so many times, and I've done it so many times where if you like miss a couple of notes in a performance, you will like lie awake at night thinking like, oh man, that one little phrase right there, I can't believe I messed that up. And you know
Right.
what you're not focusing on is all the other notes you played great,
That's right.
all the other
That's right.
ones. And it's such a percentage game, and it's
Yep.
just like, and it's so easy to fall into that self like loathing, and sometimes it gets worse the more that you've practiced that thing. It's like if I've played this thing 100 times and I finally got to a point where I can play it in my sleep and I can like close my eyes and play it without even looking at the xylophone or looking at the
Right.
drum kit, and then something goes wrong in that moment. And sometimes the more you've practiced it, the more you can be hard on yourself about like, it didn't go right.
Right.
And you
Right.
beat yourself up about it. But like, like a 98% on a test is still a 98% on a
That's
test.
right. That's right.
And one of the things that like doing the practice and doing the work, just to get to that sense of a 98% or even 90%, even 80%, like
Right.
if you can still bring that to the table, it's going to take a lot of extra work to be able to get there. But it's scary to be bad at something. And I'll tell you a great little story that I love telling students and
Yeah.
especially younger musicians. There's a famous story about Pablo Casals, who, most famous like cellist of all time. And like
Right.
for any of you students and everything, there's like Yo-Yo Ma and Pablo and then everybody else.
Right.
And that's just like he's like so over the top famous as a cellist. And he was going up to Juilliard and just to visit all of the students and visit the cello professor, and the cello professor was walking him down the hallway, and in every single practice room down the hallway were all of the cello students. He was like, no, you all are going to be lining the hallway, as he's like kind of walking Pablo through the hallway. And Pablo mid sentence stops and says, "This guy in here sounds terrible. I bet he's your best cellist."
Ha.
And that was their principal cellist at Juilliard.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
the idea of being in a practice room is not about being perfect. It's about being the exact opposite of that. It's
Yes, sir.
about being okay with being bad at something. Like, no one jumps on a bike and knows how to ride it immediately. And
Right.
that's like, the guys that really are like making something of themselves and doing this at a high level know how to work on the things that they're bad at. And that takes a incredible amount of humility and humbleness that is very hard for young people to get into. But that like once you get to that point of I don't remember when it was, but I got to a point where I realized I'm never going to play a perfect performance, and I'm okay with that.
Bingo. And if you ever do, it's just like a little cherry on top of the sundae. Like that's what I tell my students is that, like, you get these moments of perfection as artists, and like you crave them and you want that drug real bad because it's real tasty, right? But all that they are moments of perfection. You cannot be perfect in your career. It cannot happen. And if you believe that happens for anybody, and you believe that that's possible for you, you are setting yourself up for failure every time.
And well, we were talking about education, and like when I was saying, like, I auditioned for a lot of conservatories and a lot of the like, big music schools around the country. I was also really like looking at the different percussion professors I wanted to study with, and
Yeah.
I ended up going to the University of Alabama instead of taking an offer from NYU or Manhattan School or North Texas or University of Southern California. I was just like, I'm going to go to Alabama because also they paid my entire ride there. And most of those
Bingo.
conservatories do not give you the
Right.
entire ride. They'll give you
If
like a
anything.
percentage. Yeah,
Right.
if anything.
Right.
But I ended up going to Alabama, and um, it was after I went to Alabama that I was actually auditioning for my doctorate at a lot of the same conservatories, and halfway through that, I got I ended up doing this audition for Blue Man Group, and they flew me up to New York to be one of the finalists after doing a couple of regional auditions, and it was me and 8 other guys, and I didn't get it, but I was in New York, and what was funny is Blue Man Group is a kind of drummer centric show, and I was like, okay, I'm a drummer with some acting experience. All of these other guys are actors with some drumming experience. And I
Right.
didn't get it because the 2-day audition was all acting. There was no drumming. 16 hours, no drumming. And that's when I started to realize, wait a second, I need some more context of what is happening out here, because the performance and what you are putting out there was so much more important in that show than it was actually playing these like really like crazy stuff. I mean,
Right.
there's importance to both of them, but that's another thing I'd love to tell the students about is record yourself playing and ask yourself if I'd be bored watching this.
Bingo. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
My dad, as a Disney, show director, because when they did a lot of these college bands and everything, he would like bring in a bunch of talented people, and they'd put them all into one room and be like, let's create a product together. And
Right.
his biggest sentence that he would always say is, nowadays you can't put on a concert, you have to put on a show.
Yep.
And that's where I stopped doing my doctorate auditions, and I moved up to New York, and it's like, I sold my car and had like a couple $1,000s in my pocket and lived with 4 other people in the middle of New Jersey with one bathroom kind of a
Yeah.
place, and just said, I'm gonna give this a try and see what is actually happening out here, as some kid that just like from Orlando that went to Alabama that's competing against Juilliard people and all these
Right.
other guys. And they
Right.
were all, they a lot of times they were such practice room rats that they just they could not hold a candle to me because they didn't know how
Wow.
to play with other musicians. And that's
Right.
something I also really want to implore young musicians on. It's like, you can't just be the one doing the practice in the practice room by yourself. It's about like exploring how to play with other people, that I feel like has gotten me more work than anything, like as
Oh.
like a technical ability in terms of like true, percentages.
Okay, so tell me your definition of the pocket.
Oh, okay, that's a great question. So, some of the best advice that I ever got is like, if you are exactly right and everybody else is wrong, then you're wrong.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
that's so good.
that's what it's all about. Is like the pocket is about like it's the pocket is empathy. The pocket is about like feeling where everybody else feels it, because sometimes you hear definitions about the pocket where it's like, oh yeah, it's just a little laid back on the beat and everything. But that's only part of the equation. It's like, if you're playing like we do earlier today, we do a like second line version of Caravan. And it's just dun 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 dun, just, and that's one to cook. That's wanting to be, that pocket still exists at a fast tempo. That thing still keeps going right there. But like, if it's a slow funk song, that thing wants to be on the back end. That's a whole different story. And they're both the pocket. Like, where the beat is placed is not what the pocket means. It's about where the feel of that song is. It's where the feel of the musicians around you is. And pocket is knowing your research, knowing your styles, and knowing where the appropriateness of that situation is.
Yes. Oh man. One of my favorite drummers,
Mhm.
Carnegie Hall. I am just a massive
Huge.
fan. And like, to me, he is like, this is a man who has a 25-story condo inside of the pocket. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, is ants marching. Anytime you hear that live, that's the pocket. That
Oh, yeah.
intro, that it's effing quarter notes, buddy, but they're the
Mhm.
right quarter notes.
Yep.
And it doesn't come from knowing how to play quarter notes. It comes from allowing your entire body. He's playing that quarter note from the part of his toenail that just fell off. You know, like, it's coming from every part, a holistic body experience. That's where that quarter note comes from. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. And you know, it's I saw a clinic back when I was like, you know, it was like 21, 22, and it was Ndunku, who's the drummer for Billie Jean.
Yeah.
Well, for Michael Jackson's Billie Jean.
Yeah.
And he started the whole clinic off just going doot that, doot that, doot that for like 4 minutes solid. Did not do any fills, did not hit any crashes. He just did that. And then he said, I'm going to start this clinic by saying, if you can't or are not willing to do that, you need to pick something else.
Yes.
And
Oh.
it was hearing someone play the most like elementary of drum beats, the most like, this is the first drum beat that you learn, but hearing him play it by himself in a room with no other musicians and being like, oh my God, it's got so much groove and flavor and everything to it. It is just, that's it. That's the only thing that's there. It was a breathtaking moment for me to kind of let that lesson sink in. Yeah, and he was saying like, you know, it was like, when you hear this beat that is so like the first beat that you ever learn, but it's just so in like its own like pocket by itself, and it's just like, it's got so much feel, and like, you know, I don't, it's something that always sticks with me. It's just like, man, he's got that, just played that one beat, and you can tell, gee, this guy is a pro's pro and is
Has
something
chops.
else. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's like, this is why Bonham is still my favorite drummer, because
Okay.
Bonham was the one that, like, in my development was like, kind of showed me where it's just like, you can play that just and he could just do that, and it just like had every sense of awareness of everything around him. It was like he was blending his hands and his feet, and then he could like bust out the craziest things you've ever heard. And it was just like, you know, he knew when to like solidify versus throwing it down.
Dude, I think of him as being orchestral in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
I absolutely would. He would play the drums like they were a melodic instrument.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So what about when you were talking about just like the basic and doing that reminds me of Ringo and why I love Ringo as a drummer. Right? Because there's not he was a flashier personality than he was musician. And people, I think, misunderstand what a brilliant percussionist he was. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I constantly make this case to other musicians, and you know, once you kind of climb the ladder of like doing a lot of the music that I've done and playing with the people I've played with in New York and everything, the conversation is not a conversation anymore because they're the people that get it and the people that are not getting gigs. And
Right.
the
Right.
ones like the people that say like, "Oh, Ringo's a terrible drummer," it's like, what did you want him to play? Like, I
Right.
want to hold your like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
no, that's not it. That's not it
Right.
at all. And like, I
Right.
mean, and then you think about a drum beat like come together, doom 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 doom.
Oh,
That's so inventive in a way that hasn't really been
oh,
like mirrored it, like ever. And it's like okay, so it actually brings me into my like where my career went after college and everything,
yes.
and
I
where I
can't
was
wait.
like, so I you know, like I said, I moved up to New York, and just really hoping that like the money for my car could get me through, and I got a job walking dogs in West Village and was
Oh,
just
yeah.
like playing gigs as often as I could, and getting my name out there. And I want to do an art piece at some point that's going to be like a big like huge art piece that's going to be a spider web of like how I got to certain points of my career and how they had the humblest of beginnings, where it's like
Yeah.
I played this one gig that I responded to a Craigslist ad about when I first got there, and someone saw me at that gig, and they said, "Hey, you want to play with my band?" And then someone saw me at
Yep.
that one, they said, "Hey, you want to play on this cabaret thing?" And it was a building opportunity of being humble and being able to like, you know, like show what I was capable of through like consistency and everything, that you
Yeah.
know a lot of people will come out of school and be like, just pay me a lot of money, I got chops, I can play. And I remember coming up to New York and being like, I can play, I've got this in the bag. And I had to kind of humble myself to be like, you know, it's I need to be someone that is like helping the situation in a way that makes me irreplaceable. Is like you can teach people chops, but you can't like teach as many people how to really sit down and listen and
That's
be
right.
aware. And um, so as I kept doing different gigs and like showing that I was able to do that, um, you know, I really started to go into musical theater because I just like I was hustling about 8 to 10 bands at a time, and a lot of times you were like, you know, you could see kind of where some of the ceilings were because some of these people just like did not want to go into a practice room and be able to like actually work on something. It was more just a glorified jam session, and it's like, hey, if you, hey, um, my man on bass over here, like you're slowing down that bridge. Can we like pick that up? No, I'm not. And it's like, no, dude, I'm not coming at you. Hey, this is a like greater
Right.
good thing. And
Right.
doing musical theater was very much being around people that were just like,
Collaborative.
okay, we can be very collaborative and we can
Right.
understand what we're asking of each other. I know so many other drummers and percussionists that are on like another level of like talent, that is probably me being some self-loathing in its own way, but it's
Right.
also like um I always wanted to be the most appropriate drummer and the most appropriate person for whatever the gig that was. And that's why I studied so many styles and so many instruments. And even though I know people that are a better drum set player, a better timpanist, better marimba player than me, I don't know people that are the well-rounded listeners that want to just be appropriate in the situation like
Yeah.
me. And that's what I really like got me past so many other guys from conservatories and from really rich families that would take lessons from like the world's best and everything, is because
Right.
music to me is not about an individual. It's about a group, and it's about understanding how to blend with that group and with that situation. And that's
Yeah,
what got me so many other places.
man, I love all of that.
This episode of Performance SmArts Podcast is brought to you by your mom. Nothing would be here without your mom.
Are you tired of regular old socks that just, well, sock? Then you need Dingle Hopper feet. Dingle Hopper feet. Breathable, comfortable, and guaranteed to make your tootsies the envy of the podiatrist world.
Dingle hopper feet? Really?
Hey Rob, we've been with you since your sock puppet days. We support all your artistic endeavors, no matter how unusual.
All right. You got me there, dingle hopper feet. They're dingle darn delightful.
Dingle Hopper feet. We put the fun in fungus. Visit us online at dinglehopperfeet.com.
What was the low point of your career so far, and how did you crawl your way out of it?
Which one? I mean, oh
I
boy.
love it. Yes.
There's so many. There are
Okay,
so many.
no, here. Let's do this. Have you ever professionally been looking up at rock bottom?
Wait, professionally looking up, as in like,
I think actually, didn't you had a bad accident, right?
yeah.
This is something like I'm actually just 1 year and 2 days after breaking my spine. And I'm only 5 months since my surgery. So I've had to learn to do all of it all over again. And I remember watching you go. Was it a car accident that you were involved in?
Yeah, I was hit from behind such a high speed that I was in my wife's Ford Edge, and the back right tire got knocked about 20 feet off of the car. And that was like about 2.5, like 3 years ago, give or take. Tennis elbow, golf elbow, and like a lot of exasperation, and I had to get all the injections in my spine, and those are those moments of like, oh man, am I is this arm ever going to work the same way again?
Right.
Is this it? Yeah. And
Right.
like that is a very deep low, and it was one of those like just having to trust the physical therapists and do all the exercises and do the work. And I'm very lucky that I've been able to like I'm not at what my level of like hours long endurance used to be. Like I can feel my arm, like it doesn't give out while I'm playing, but I can feel
the fatigue setting in.
I can feel the fatigue and the pain that will come in, and I do my reps on that, and that one was scary. But here's the thing, that was not nearly as scary as some of the existential lows. So as I progressed in New York, I got to a point about 2 years in, I didn't have to. It was actually about like a year and a half or so that I didn't have to like be walking dogs anymore. I was doing this full time, just doing shows all around. And I got to a point where I think now I've counted. I counted a couple of weeks ago. I've done like over 75 or 80 different like productions of musicals. No, different musicals, and some of them I've done Sweeney Todd like 8 different productions of it, where like some were like 2-3 months, and some were like 6, and so I've done a lot of those, and I've done like I've played in Carnegie Hall 11 times now. I've got my 12th time coming up with like in June. I'm not sure if I can actually say who it's with, No, wait, I totally can. I'm playing with Lauren Daigle in Carnegie. So
Excellent. And you've played with her before, right?
yeah, in Carnegie as well, and she wanted to have
Nice.
me back. And then I played with I played a couple of shows with Jennifer Hudson like several years ago, and that was my first show after like the car accident and everything. Is I had gotten asked by Jennifer Hudson's people to come play with her. I played with Kansas. I've played in Lincoln Center. I've toured like 3 times in Italy, twice others around Europe, 2 times in China, once in Japan, and countless times around America. And like I've played on Broadway. I've played like I've had my Broadway chair that was like my own spot and everything. And you know, at any given time, there there's something that I really want to implore on younger people that I always thought that being a musician was going to be a like, okay, I'm going to jump from lily pad to lily pad, and eventually I'm going to find solid ground, and I will never be sad ever again.
Right.
And
Right.
that's it, you're never going to find that one gig, and if you keep thinking that that's just going to be what it is, then that's going to keep you in moments where you can't appreciate what you're doing and where you are. I remember a lot of those Carnegie Hall shows. I could not like. I remember thinking during my like third, fourth, fifth time, being like, "Okay, I got to go talk to this guy. I should network with this guy. What am I doing tomorrow? I'm doing all." And it's like, dude, you're playing in Carnegie Hall right now, and it's
Right.
just like taking that moment to appreciate it. So those lows, like, there's never just one low because there are so many times that a show will end and it's just like, oh man, I'm never going to work again.
Right.
This is
Right.
it, and like you can never feel like, okay about it. I did this one show that was my first off Broadway show, and I wrote the book. We had a really great press circuit and everything. Jason Alexander was doing press for us and everything, and it was an awesome dude's really nice. Also, you would love him.
I bet. If you ever want to get him in touch with me, I would not be upset about that. Get him to do this podcast, and
There
I'll
you
send
go.
you a steak dinner or something. I don't know.
But he like so we everything was going great, and the previews went great for any of your students or anybody else listening. When you do a Broadway or off Broadway show, you normally do about like 16 different previews, give or take, and those are like public shows, but it's like kind of we're tweaking all of like the little last things, and then there comes a point where it's like show is set, we're not changing anything else, but this is our way of like gauging like, do the public like the jokes, or are they getting the
Right.
emotional moments? So we did all
What works
those,
and not. Yeah.
and then right before our opening night, the producer said, congratulations on your opening night, this is also going to be our closing night.
Oh, that's heartbreak.
Yeah, it was devastating, and
Yeah.
we were so mad, and it was just like, also tell us after our first show, not like right before. We're like so stoked about opening night, and
Oh.
we find out at intermission that one of the producers had slept with the other producer's wife, and they just liquidated all their assets, and it was out of our control. And it's
Right.
one of those things that when it's out of your control, you're like, ah.
Right.
And then, and then later that night, I was on the subway and I got hit in the face. Like, yep. And so, I lived in New York for 10 years, never got hit in the face, but I got hit in the face the night after my one show
punched?
closed on opening night. Yeah, punched in the face. It's like there were a bunch of like teenage kids that were just messing around the subway, and they like one of them was trying to get in my face, and I was just like, look, man, I'm having a hard day. What do you want? Like, and I just stood up, said, like, what do you want? And then his buddy clocked me from behind, and it was just like, okay, my first show, my first off-Broadway show that I wrote the book for just closed, and I get hit in the face for the first time in New York. It's just like, why am I doing this? What is,
right.
and it's though, yeah. So like, I guess to the point is there's so many different of those lows, and you know, what brings me back to it is like that there is just I've adopted this phrase that I came up with years ago that was like, follow the things that give you goosebumps because that's where passion lies.
Yes. Yes. Love
And
it.
because sometimes you can trick your brain can trick you, and you know, talking about mental health, I have been diagnosed with ADHD since I was in second grade.
Right.
I've
We
had
bonded over this when you were a child. I don't know if you remember that, but
I totally do remember that
it
because
was
you were one
me
of the
like,
first people that actually said something about that, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like that's it was so untalked about that I'm am I broken? Is my brain just like completely rotten?
yeah.
And I remember being like, man, this guy who seems like he's got it all together and giving me the best advice on how to talk to girls is like he's got it all figured out, and he's like, oh yeah, I got that too. It's like,
Yeah.
oh wow, and
Yeah. Interlocking was really special for me because it was the very first place where I found my peers. I found my people. You know what I mean? Like I had friends growing up, and some of them are really accomplished, wonderful musicians and artists and all of that. But Interlocking, it was like a third of the kids there were of my tribe. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And I kept coming back for that third of the kids there because it's like we were all our own individual unmanned fire hose of creativity, just going everywhere and being inspired by each other. And I mean, I was in college by the time that I met
yes.
you, so like I really had been so inspired by so many of those kids. You even.
This episode of Performance SmArts podcast is brought to you by your mom. Nothing would be here without your mom.
Are you tired of regular old socks that just, well, sock? Then you need Dingle Hopper feet. Dingle Hopper feet. Breathable, comfortable, and guaranteed to make your tootsies the envy of the podiatrist world.
Dingle hopper feet? Really?
Hey, Rob, we've been with you since your sock puppet days. We support all your artistic endeavors, no matter how unusual.
All right. You got me there, dingle hopper feet. They're dingle darn delightful.
Dingle Hopper feet. We put the fun in fungus. Visit us online at DINGLEHOPPERFEET.com.
I mean, like, do you remember did you shave my head from
Yeah.
a ping pong game that you won? Do you remember this?
Yes, I absolutely do.
Did you know that that's the only time I've actually shaved my head?
Fantastic.
Yes. But, I mean, like,
I remember being so happy about winning that ping pong game.
yes, I let you win. I want to say that for the record right now.
Okay. Now we're gonna.
No,
have to play
I did
again.
not.
Now we're
No.
gonna have to play again.
Anytime, any place, and by any place I mean you got to come up here and see my studio, and then we'll play some ping pong or something. So,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, dude.
You know what like when it comes to the ADHD and everything, and what you were saying about it being like a superpower that you can like find for yourself, it's uh it is like amazing being able to like it can be hard because sometimes like when you say that to yourself you're like, okay, someone's just trying to make me feel better about myself.
Right,
And
right.
but then you find the different things about like your sense of like in the moment awareness is so heightened to a level that like other people do not have, that you can just be so like aware of your surroundings and aware as a musician of the things that are happening around you. And
Yes.
you know, it's that's a special thing. And you know, the anxiety I've dealt with, the depression I've dealt with, and so many different depressed moments. And when my dad passed, and you know, to like just give some context to any listeners, my dad passed like 7 years ago from early onset Alzheimer's, like a form of dementia, that he passed away at 65, and I had to watch him lose his memory over 7 years, and like forget who I was and all of that, and that puts you in a really dark place, and
Oh,
that is, and and the anxiety of like, am I ever going to play again? And like, these gigs are going really well. This is the moment that I made it. And then it's not. Then you're like,
right.
oh, now I got to figure out something else. And there are so many different moments that you can kind of like feel your brain just spiraling. And like, it's, you know, I like to say, and my therapist will kind of say this also, it's like, you have to know when your brain's trying to lie to you for a moment.
Right.
But then you also have to know when your brain is having this sense of awareness. And I've got this little piece of paper that my dad gave me when I graduated high school, that just like is one small column of like pieces of advice that he had. And two of them that are on there are like, don't let the bad times fool you, and don't let the good times fool you.
Yeah, man,
And
I love that. That's
because
deep.
you can't just like lean too far in one direction or the other, because like, it's great to be able to do that and celebrate yourself or feel those bad feelings, but that, like, you can't push it too far in one direction. So I think it's definitely important to be able to beat your chest and be like, man, I just played this timpani concerto with a symphony orchestra in like the middle of Lincoln Center, as like the most famous music hall in the world. I can
Yeah.
celebrate myself, but also I can't let that make me think I'm invincible. And if I lose a gig, or if like, you know, a tour that I was supposed to go on ends up getting shut down, even though I carved up the next 8 months for it, which happened.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was a whole story, but
yeah.
like, that can't be the thing that is going to devastate you also, because one of my favorite Maya Angelou quotes is, always remember every storm runs out of rain.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
You still go gig to gig, and you still like, anyone. What I loved what you asked about was the not like, have you ever had a moment where you just wanted to give up on music? Because that's like, anybody who is a musician has. Anybody. That's
Right.
it's almost too obvious
I'm
of
not
a
going to ask that.
question.
Right.
It's too obvious, because
Right.
that's it. Every single person that's ever done this at any level has gotten to like that's it. I'm done with this. I'm
Yep.
never doing it again. I
Yep.
can't do it. And
Self-doubt is a part of most people's processes. Yeah.
yeah, you have to have that sense of self-doubt at the same time to be able to keep pushing forward, because at the end of the day, as much as the anxiety can sometimes get to me, which I definitely like always advocate, go to therapy, talk to the
Yes.
therapist. Every
Yes.
single person should talk to a therapist. There's
Yes.
nobody that shouldn't. It's amazing, and it's not about what they're going to say to you. It's sometimes what you're going to be able to say, that you hear coming out of your own mouth, and you're like, oh,
Oh.
it was right there the entire time. It
Right.
was like, it's like, I advocate for that, but also the same time, when it comes down to like how I feel, like this anxious, like, oh my gosh, like this anxious, like, I'm never going to be up to the standard that I set for myself, and like, valid or invalid, have set for myself, conscious
Right.
or unconscious. No, even if I can't ever live up to that, I'd rather be like at a point where I'm kind of like, okay, the anxiety is here because it's telling me that I can do some better stuff and I can keep going, instead of waking up one day and just being like, you know what? I'm okay with just like being mediocre. And
Right.
I don't say being mediocre is terrible, but it's also like, being mediocre is not about being at like where you are amongst everybody else. It's about just like waking up and just trying to do something that betters your life. It's
Right.
not a comparison to anyone. It's just,
Right.
if you wake up and you try a little bit more than you did like the last few days, then you're way more than mediocre.
I will tell you this. I'm a huge proponent of defining success. Everybody has to individually define success. There's no textbook blanket definition for it. It means different things to different people. And as musicians, if we understand that, we're going to be way less hard on ourselves. We're going to set more reasonable goals that will see the progress happen. Without these, like, I'm going to be Bonham, I'm going to be the next Carter Beauford or the next Victor Wooten. Every time I pick up a bass, that's it. I'm going to be the next Victor Wooten. Like, I'm not going to be the next Victor Wooten. Like, he's actually an alien that was not born on this planet. I am positive of it. But you know what I mean? Like,
I was talking to Victor Wooten last week, actually. That's a whole other conversation. Yeah.
Okay, like, are you just trying to make me jealous? Or I mentioned I live in a cornfield, okay? Please tell Vic I said hello, okay? Because
I will. We're gonna hang out with him at Wooten Woods with our Cowboy Bebop band in about 2 weeks, actually.
Can you please?
Yeah.
I know that it'll mean nothing to him, but he is one of the most influential musicians in my life and always has been, genuinely. So tell me about him. Tell me, what's he like?
Okay, so Victor, like, we got to know each other when I was doing the Illusionist on Broadway, and I at the time was dating a girl that was working at the Blue Note, and I was about to leave my gig, and she calls me up and says, "Hey, Chick Corea is here playing with Lenny White, and Victor Wooten's sitting in for the night."
Are you kidding?
So I was like, "I'll be right there." So I ended up going down the Blue Note and just checking out the show, and I waited afterwards just till everybody else was gone, and Vic came out, and I said, "Hey man, I'm just such a big fan of yours," and blah blah blah, and then we just got talking, and he's so sweet, because when you talk to him, like, anybody when you talk to him, he's just like, "Man, it's a pleasure to get to meet you." It's like,
right.
God, I love you so much.
Right. Why do you have it all figured out? It's because he's an alien.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the, like, when we're talking, he said, like, he got around to me saying, "Oh yeah, I'm playing the Illusionist on Broadway," which was a really big magic show that was some of the biggest, like, names in magic were involved in this show, and he lit up, and he's like, "Oh, I've been wanting to see that show. I love magic so much. Like, oh man, that is so awesome. I know Charlie Fry. I know some of those guys." It was just, and I was like, "Hang on, let me call my stage manager really quick."
Victor Wooten's nerding out with me. Victor Wooten's nerding out with me.
And I was like, and his daughter was going to NYU at the time, and I called the stage manager. I'm like, "I don't care what you have to do. You need to get this man and his daughter some tickets, because they can come to the show tomorrow. You have to get these tickets. Like, I will, like, I will give you my next 18 paychecks in the row."
Right.
He's like, "Dude, calm down. I'll get him tickets." So then I called the bass player, and I'm like, "Dave, Victor Wooten's coming tomorrow," and he was like, "Oh my God, I got to go practice. Sorry."
Right. I'll be back. Right. 10 minutes before call.
So Vic ended up, he came to the show, he loved it. And what's funny, side story, I found out through him that, like, a lot of bass players are really into magic shows. And Jocko used to base his tours with Weather Report and his solo tours around where Ringling Brothers was going to be, so that he could hang out with all the magicians after the show and do after parties with all the magicians from Ringling Brothers. And
my God.
And Victor was talking about how he used to have, like, a levitating bass, like, thing in one of his acts when he was younger, where he would pull the sheet off and the bass would be gone. And And then, like, ironically, I know another like buddy of mine who his twin brother was in my high school drum line, and this dude's become a magician, and he and Victor will do like the juggling swords kind of acts where they're throwing them at each other. And I'll send you a video because Victor is actually a really good magician. So we got to be really good buddies after like getting him tickets, and I got to work on a show with his daughter completely like independent of that. And anytime he was in New York, I'd go say hey and hang out with him. And anytime like I'd be where he was, we just like get together. And you know, right now I'm playing with this Cowboy Bebop band that a buddy of mine about a year and a half ago transcribed all the music from Cowboy Bebop and for a 14-piece big band. And
Yes.
you know, it's the show has been popping off, and we just did a sold out tour in like New Orleans, Houston, Dallas, and Austin, like selling out like, you know, 1,800 seat places, and it's been popping off. And we were looking for a rehearsal spot in Nashville because we're going to be in Nashville in like 2 weeks. And I was like, hey, let me call Victor Wooten. They were like, wait, what did you say?
Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting.
So Victor is like, yeah, come out to the Wooten Woods. Like, you know, you guys can come play out there and love to come check it out. So we're going to be hanging with him in a couple of weeks, and I'll definitely say hey for you. I'll see if I can get him on the podcast.
You know, if you can do that, I'll owe you a big one, because he is like, actually, it's because he has such a clearly defined musical philosophy that I just love. I love him, and I love Carter Beauford for actually the exact same reason. Like, they're just such philosophers.
It's exactly what you're saying. Is like, that's something that anything I've been telling you about that is something that I internalized from reading his books, and like that exact sense, which is like, you know, I'm getting goosebumps right now. That's where passion lies.
Follow it, man. Follow it. Oh, well, I don't want to keep you too long. It's going to be hard to edit this down because all of it was gold. So I'm just going to have a really effing long podcast. But we're going to have to do a take two on like a recall, because we haven't gotten even into so much. We'll
definitely do a part two.
We will.
We can talk for 4 hours and be awesome.
Dude, well, I'm saying if you ever road trip up to Interlochen, let's say, I am literally on the way from, like, I guess if you go off of 75, I'm only about a half hour off of 75, so not far out of the way.
We've been plotting a trip to go up to Interlochen because my wife's never seen it, and and then I've got some family in Pittsburgh that I haven't seen in a long time, so we're kind of deciding if we want to do like a little kind of road trip type of thing, or go like this way from Chicago and other things. But basically what I'm saying is sometime within the next year or so, we're planning on definitely being around your area. And I was trying to see if I get, like, because our Cowboy Bebop group, it's the Bebop Bounty Big Band. You can find all of our stuff under Bebop Bounty Big Band. And we've been putting a bunch of shows together, and we're doing we're doing like the Nashville-ish area this next month, and then kind of like Southeast in May, and then West Coast in June, and then a lot of the Northeast in like July, August, September, that are still kind of being solidified. So I'm definitely going to be around your area for multiple reasons. So
and I want to come see you too. Like, if you're going to be gigging, especially, then I definitely want to come see you. So where are you right now physically in the world?
I'm in Orlando, Florida. I'm playing at Universal Studios for another 2 weeks down here for their Mardi Gras band that we do. Like, we've been playing here since early February, and I'm there like 5-6 days a week. And then I'm going on tour with the Bebop Bounty Big Band. And then, I'm also going to be in New York for the Carnegie Hall thing coming up. And I got a couple other things around that are coming up. So there's a lot of pretty cool things coming up. And, you know, I still have anxiety and depression, and I still have imposter syndrome.
It's okay. Sure.
And it's totally fine. And it's not something that just like goes away, you just kind of learn to be like, okay,
Oh.
I know how to manage you, and I can
Right.
still enjoy my life. I can still have great moments, and
Yes.
you can live with that stuff, and it's okay, and you're going to be okay, and you just put one foot in front of the other, and every storm runs out of rain,
And just keep
and
drumming, man. Yeah.
last thing, you said the idea of defining success. And this is
Okay.
something that I've thought about so much when I kept thinking, if I can say I played at these places, that was success.
Yeah.
And but my definition came back to what people say about my dad, and what they say about me is that success is what someone's face who or worked with does when someone else mentions your name to them.
Yes.
When someone says Bob Radock to someone and they go, "Oh man, that guy, just so much that he did for the world and so much that he was able to put out there." And like, there are musicians that are incredibly successful, but when you mention their name to someone else, there's just a like that guy was a lot. But
Right.
that's like, so success is not achievement, money, and stuff like that. That's part of it, but it's about like how you treat the people around you and how they remember you and how you make up for your mistakes. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect, and it just means like you got to do right by the people around you, because success
Yeah.
is a empathy thing, just like the pocket.
Yeah. Oh God, I love this. Brian Radock, I love you. Genuinely,
I love you, brother.
I am so proud of you, and I cannot wait until the next time we get to do this, okay?
Yeah, man. I love you, brother. It's so great
Yeah.
getting to see your face, and good luck editing this down, because man, I just love getting to talk with you, dude. It's just
Well,
we could do like a 10-part 3-hour series, and I would never
I'm
run
just
out
saying,
of
if you
topics.
ever want to do it together, we could I think we'd be a good team. That's all I'm saying.
I would totally be interested in that, actually.
We're gonna have a lot of Ritalin on hand, and right.
That's for sure.
Awesome. Hey, have a great night, please. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. I would be horrible. Please introduce your wife. Can you tell us about your wife?
Oh, so my wife is she is a music teacher and music director for elementary school kids, and she runs a group called an organization called the Atlanta Music Education, and she's got probably 100 different families that take lessons from her, and like about 8 different teachers under her. And she also ended up like starting her own art business that's based on like ripping up sheet music and repurposing old recycled sheet music to
Love it.
create new life out of it and write quotes on it. And even she just made this one that's like all the different Disney parks and everything.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
on repurposed sheet music. And
That's
she does
so
a lot
cool.
of Broadway quotes and a lot of mental health quotes, because it started for her as an art therapy thing, and
Right.
it actually in some way to design and decorate her classrooms. And it's spoken to a lot of people, because she's very much an advocate of mental health and what it means to do art therapy, and what it means to find something that gives you the goosebumps. So
Right.
she can be found at Lexicon of Love Music Art. She's got an Etsy store. She just started making stickers. Oh, you'll love this one.
Yes.
It just
No thanks. Just your money is no good here with all of this amazing exposure, sir. Thank you.
This delicious exposure. Yeah, Lexicon of Love Music Art. You find her on all the socials and everything, and she like sends out her artwork in canvas and print form all around the world. And she's my light. I'm always amazed.
I haven't met her in person, obviously, but I've written to her several times, because she seems to be such an inspirational person. And also, from being somebody looking in from the outside on your life via social media, she seems to have entered your life at exactly the right time. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. I mean, it's sometimes that like, you know, um, yeah, sometimes it's just kind of like, wow, you were here exactly when
You
exactly when I
needed
needed you to be
you
around.
needed bubbly sunshine, it seems, because like if I
Mhm.
recall, you seem to have been in a bit of a dark place around then. And like
Very much.
she just seems, I mean, aside from being gorgeous, like she just seems so smiley and bubbly, and like that's she projects that, and I can imagine that that would be a very helpful thing for you.
Oh, absolutely. And she's very much she was a opera trained like student and everything
Yeah,
and got so tired of it because it really hurt her mental health, the old way of teaching, and
yep,
her whole methodology is about like, you
mine
know,
too.
this is music and this is something that is fun that we can enjoy, that is not something that like I need to beat you over the head with because that
Right.
is counterproductive. And it's so amazing seeing how much she's been able to do out in the world and inspire
It's
so many people. I love it so
it
much.
makes
And
me happy. She's done on a larger scale what I want to be doing and what I've tried doing. I've got 20 years in on my studio, and the amount of kids that I've worked with is really, really awesome. But now I'm in a phase in an era where I'm going to grow this and expand this, and I'm going all in on this. And she's an inspiration because even though we didn't talk about any of this, we've come up with a very similar business model in that I hate the way that I was taught music. I hate
mhm,
the way that I was taught music. I love some of the people who taught me music, but I think that they're idiots when it comes to what it actually takes to be an intuitive musician. And I say that
mhm,
with all the love that I could
mhm.
possibly muster for them. But I've never once been hard on a student, and they keep getting better. It's like, and then they keep getting into wonderful colleges and conservatories. I'm like, how is that?
Mhm.
I never said, wow, you suck at that.
Yep. And
You
that's
know,
what most of us had to deal with. Like,
it
and
is.
it's so nice to like see it become like, you know, so much of a different thing now.
Yeah.
Like, and I love you for that because that just makes me so happy that there are just more people like you and like Alexa out there
We're
doing
doing
the
it.
thing and just like, that and like my dad and like
Yeah.
that just this is like about spreading joy and seeing the smiles on people's faces instead of
Yeah.
just spreading self-doubt. And like there's so much more to it, and I love that you and Alexa are part of that legacy of what he always was all about.
Absolutely. Brian,
So,
thank you so much. We'll tell her I love her too, and I can't wait to meet her. And thank you so much. Have a great night, buddy.
you too, man. Let's do it
Okay,
again very soon, for
next
sure.
time, definitely. See ya.
Take care, bud.
Bye.
This has been a production of Performance SmArts Studios. Performance SmArts Studios is a Lawson Arts LLC company located in Defiance, Ohio. For more information, please visit us at performancesmarts.com or on Facebook.